Welcome to my podcast, Doing Business with a Servant's Heart. I'm so excited you are here. You'll hear some incredible stories about how people are serving around the world, how they overcame a struggle, how they serve. These shows will give you an edge in business and your personal life. I believe serving over sales will help you grow in so many ways. And now, about our incredible sponsor, Info. Info is a web app that puts your business on people's cell phones when you meet people online or in person. They can engage with your business or send out referrals with a button click, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The power of business is connecting with more people. Remember, your network is your net worth. Info will do this for you. I would love to help spread the word about these shows, so please subscribe to this podcast and find us on all your podcast platforms. Please share with anyone you know could benefit from our shows. Please enjoy the show. Welcome, everybody, to another incredible episode with Doing Business with a Servant's Heart. And I got another servant, Robert Plank here. Robert, welcome to our show.
Glad to be here.
Well, I love having people like you, and you're a Californian, so that's even better. Sounds like we grew up close to each other. Let's talk about where you're all started, what you do right now in your business, and how it got started and why you started it.
So what I do now, it's called DFY Podcasts. We run podcasts, and the way that it started was I was always real excited about computer programming, making computer programs, making apps, things like that. But I didn't want to work for someone else and have to clock in, clock out. And I did that for a few years of playing the game of going into employment and getting that little item on my resume and dealing with coworker drama and dealing with that situation of working with other people who kind of did the bare minimum. And if you rose above and beyond, you were rewarded with more work, with doing more responsibilities for not enough pay. So that wasn't very fun, but the entrepreneurism was more stress, but also more fun and more rewards. Mm-hmm. So I created things like WordPress plugins and courses and things like that. And I kind of struggled for a while, but on the way, I guess a big shift, a kind of aha, is this idea of documenting what you do and of creating information products. And if you have a skill to teach it and put it in writing and put it on video, and you're all about doing business with a servant's heart, and so you're kind of like giving away or like selling for a low price, the secret sauce, the recipe about what you do. And I went from the before picture was I was struggling to get paid. I was struggling to find clients. I was struggling to find customers. But then after I began giving away a lot of my information and then selling some of my information, then it was counterintuitive that like by being more generous and moving the free line, as they say, then I started to have to turn people down. It was like giving away the information then kind of attracted all these people to me. And so that's led to So I used to sell different courses on things like how to make a membership site, how to make a book, and then stumbled on this podcasting thing. And these last couple of years, especially pandemic and post-pandemic, with Zoom is now good technology, and the web cameras look good, and the internet access is fast. Podcasting has been a lot of fun, especially because, as you know yourself, you can network and connect with a heck of a lot of people and help people. And there's all sorts of other benefits to that. So podcast is my bread and butter these days.
I love it. And you said a little bit, but again, why podcasting?
Podcasting because you can kind of connect one-on-one. You can get your message out there, and by repeating and reiterating, you can kind of get it refined. And then there's like the geeky benefits, like search engine optimization. Like when people search these days, they're searching these long phrases. Like in a couple of days, my wife and I are about to potty train our kid. We're going to do some kind of 3-day potty training plan. And we were specifically looking for like, okay, during those 3 days, what are the exact activities? So like when I do searches these days, I'm looking for something really specific. And so if you have your own business and you're not sure about what to talk about or write about, you show up on different podcasts and you rank for all kinds of different phrases and keywords. And so when someone is looking for you, but they don't know it yet, then they search some big long phrase and they end up and find you on some podcast appearance that ideally leads back to your website or your podcast. And so many benefits, the search ranking, the refining your messaging, and then the one-on-one connecting.
You're absolutely right. That's the power. And that's why more and more people are doing podcasts. So in regards to, and I love what you said, because it's true. It's been 2 months and I'm just seeing a great network. I had a huge network before, but it's growing because of the podcast. So let's go over some of the details that your company does if somebody wants to do a podcast.
So if someone wants to do a podcast, what we do is we load you up in a chat room, basically, and you tell us about your company and what you want the name of your podcast to be, if you have existing like brand, colors, logos, and many times the people get stuck on the silliest things, right? And they get stuck on, well, what should I name my podcast? And so many times, name your podcast your existing book name or your company name, right? That's called branding. And even the name of your podcast doesn't matter all that much. And you might even change it later or change it up, in the future. And so you make your podcast and we figure out a couple of minor details like the name and the graphic and things like that. And then from that point moving forward, you give us videos, you give us content. And so it can be as simple as you sit in your car, and because your car has, great acoustics, you can sit in your car, put your phone in selfie mode, record a video. And is that the most high octane professional green screen look? No, but it gets you started. It gets you some content. And then moving forward, you do kind of what you're doing here is you find people who can be on your show. And there's people all over the internet who are just like on podcasts all day, every day, because it works. It's good networking. And so the way that the process works is you give my team these video files and then we get it out there for you. So we publish it on your podcast platforms. So that way it ends up on Apple, Google Podcasts, Audible, iHeartRadio, Spotify, with the music and the ads, kind of like I listened to a couple of your episodes a few minutes ago, Steve, and I heard like the ads for InPhone and the music and things like that. So we get it on the podcast platforms, and we get it if you have a website, WordPress blog, YouTube channel, cut it up and put it on your social platforms. And so that way you can just focus on those high level revenue generating activities like meeting, networking, being on the show, recording it, and then we worry about getting it to those 50 other different places.
So they just recording content. You do everything else.
Yes, exactly. Because like you could waste your whole day saying, oh, I'm going to only spend this little bit of time recording content and the rest of the day on finding just the right video clips for TikTok, or finding a cool graphic or finding a cool quote of yours and putting it on a graphic and posting it to Instagram. So instead of this amount of recording and all this amount on the tech stuff, we'd rather you spend all day recording or even like thinking about your content. And so that way you don't have to switch gears and figure out 50 different things.
Robert, you nailed it. I'm going to say my experience. That's what I did. I just started recording guests, and by the first month I had 30 recordings, and then I was able to, with my group, be able to get it out. And audience, if you're looking to do a podcast, he's absolutely right. It's as simple as that. It's not difficult. I've been looking to do a podcast for years till I ran the group that I work with, and it's really simple. And I love the fact of promotion. Talk more about promoting their business with their podcast and how you do that.
Yeah. So like we were saying a few minutes ago about like search engine ranking, right? So if you have, you have Robert Plank on Steve Ramona's podcast, well, what shows up in search engines, right? With a Steve Ramona, Robert Plank, your company name, my company name, and then depending on what we talk about, there's different phrases and keywords that show up in the title. We create podcast show notes, so that way deep within the content of the episode itself, there's different things that show up there. There's different like timestamps in the show notes, so that if someone is looking for something specific, then that's a path there. And then as far as you getting more attention to your content and things like that, we talked about posting different kind of social media platforms and like different formats. And then you can have a lot of fun with doing things like re-promoting old episodes over time, right? Yeah. In 6 months or 9 months, if even like later in this year, Steve, if you posted this episode that we're on now and it was like months later and you're like still promoting it, I'd be super delighted, right? And you can tag your guests in these in these posts. You can contact your podcast guests and say, hey, I created these graphics that I'm using on my own social media to promote our show. Why don't you, post it on your own social platforms? You can write tweets and write promotional emails, like a 100-word block of text saying, like, if you have an email list, paste this into your, into the sends area of your autoresponder, and you send that to your guests as well, so that they can promote you. And so, your show is doing business with a servant's heart, and so both sides are serving, right? Because you're doing your guest a favor because you're giving them a platform to to expand their message. Yeah. And then it works the other way because you're on your show delivering content. So there's all these ways to follow up and to post in many other different platforms just to get that message out more.
So true. And audience, listen to the power of what he just said. There's thousands of people between the guest and Robert, what he does, and other people that can pass it on. Your business can get out there pretty quick. So this is something that's pretty powerful, that what he's doing, and makes it easy for you. Go out and do your recordings, and I'm sure if they needed help finding guests, I'm sure you would do that as well, correct?
Yeah, I love doing that. And I'm glad that you brought that up about finding guests, because a lot of people, just like all these steps in the process we're talking about, it's easy to make so many excuses. And I have tried some real long shots sometimes with guests. Like a week ago, I was chatting with Guy Kawasaki, who was big with the launch of the Macintosh, and he invented like Canva, and he serves on Wikipedia. And I don't even deserve to be emailing Guy Kawasaki, but I tried, right? And somehow he replied to me, and I had a client I was trying to get on his show, and he was like, well, you're not a Neil deGrasse Tyson, you're not a Jane Goodall type. And I was like, oh, okay, but no harm in asking. Yeah. And so yeah, if someone out there says, well, I don't know who to have on my podcast, and likewise, I don't know what shows I should be on, a really good idea is to look back at like your top customers, your existing customers, who's paying you every month. You go back and think about your mentors. Think about someone that you were in business with maybe like 5-10 years ago, and maybe your podcast is a good reason to reconnect. And so there's so many cool ways that you can, people think about podcasting as far as like making new relationships. You can deepen and strengthen your existing ones. You can find some of these people that you sort of talk to but could reconnect with, or you can think about your top clients and customers, and you have them on your show to show off everybody, right? Yeah. Because it shows them off, it shows you off, and then it for all you know, it might keep them around as a customer for the next 5 to 10 years.
That's powerful. That's a lot of money in somebody's pocket that you're talking about. Regards to the podcast, and do you do other things like blogs, other outside sources besides, podcasts can lead into blogs, newsletters? Do you help with all that too? Because it can grow pretty massively.
A little bit. It depends on the podcast notes. It can be pretty detailed depending on how you want them. So those are almost blog posts. And then what's worked well for me, I haven't done it for, actually, I do it for one client, but what's worked well for me are like the compilation books. And so a fun kind of low-hanging fruit for podcasting is you have people on your show, and my show, I think you'll be episode 926 later on, Steve. And so I've done hundreds of these. And so if you think of, okay, let's say that you did like 100 podcast interviews, and you go back and you contact each of those 100 and you say, hey, we're putting together a new book, and we're going to have each chapter, maybe we'll have 10 chapters, and we want to kind of transcribe the interview you had on our show and like clean it up and put it in a book chapter, so that way you don't have to do anything. Or if you want to kind of revise what we transcribed, that's fine. But like the point is, let's say you had 100 podcast guests and you contact all of them and you get 10 of them to pay you $1,000 or $2,000. to have a chapter in your book, and then you make like a version with them on the cover. You make a little like tiny size with just their chapter, and that's a cool way of, again, and you send them a bunch of copies of their book in the mail, so it's like deepening the relationship, and it's one of those kind of sometimes used but not often enough ways of repurposing your podcast and getting it into sort of that more written format, is taking those guests on your show who agree to it to get their episode put as a chapter of many other multiple authors in a book. And some of these podcast guests that you have, if not for you, they might not ever be published authors. And I mean, you can charge for it, you can do it for free, you can do a mix of that. And so that's kind of as far as that idea that you mentioned there of taking the video and the audio form and making it more printed. The compilation books are a lot of fun. And I've done 3 of my own over the years. And I have a client right now, we're working on book number 10 in the past year and a half. So it's a really, and every book is really good and every chapter is really good. It's not a lot of fluff. Like everyone has their own area of expertise because they've got these decades of knowledge. Then they showed up on a podcast and we just kind of worked our magic and turned it into some printing material.
Robert, that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant, because there's a lot of people that like to write books, but they don't know where to start or how or what to do. And you're the guy to go to do that. And you're building content for your book on your podcast.
Yes.
Wow. That's really brilliant. And audience, I'm saying that twice because reach out to him. What's your name of your company again, Robert, so they know?
DFYpodcast.com.
And what's a way they can connect with you?
They can connect with me. My podcast is marketeroftheday.com, and you can find me on LinkedIn, Robert Plank, and email is robert.plank@gmail.com.
So reach out to them. It'll also be in the show notes, but I like my guests. I've started out to put it out there just to remind people, because if they're interested in a podcast or a book, write your book, do your podcast, or podcast and write your book, right? You kind of go both ways, correct?
Yeah, you go both ways or just repeat forever, right?
Yeah,
You use the podcast to think of ideas for the book, put out the book, and then put out more podcast episodes talking about the book. And then years pass and you say, hey, I made the book and I put out these podcast episodes. Now I have an idea for another book, and it just continues forever. You're just publishing content.
What day was your first podcast you recorded?
2012.
Okay, so audience, 10 years, 10 and a half year, 10 years, you recorded that's only 90 shows a year. That's not what I'm trying to say is it's not a daunting task, right?
Right.
Okay,
yeah, and I overthought it. Like back then, I mean, there still aren't that many rules for the internet, and everyone has opinions. But back then, people knew even less. And back then, I thought that I needed hour-long episodes, so I really sweated it. And my first 5 episodes were an hour, and it was just me. And then after like 10 or 20 episodes, I thought, okay, well, maybe it makes more sense to go like 20 minutes per episode. And then for most of those first 100 episodes, it was sometimes I would have a guest, but 100 episodes was mostly me. And I ran out of ideas. I ran into content. And then it turned into just an interview show. And when you have guests on your show, you never run out of content because you always have new guests. And especially if you do what you're doing with your show, Steve, is like you're thinking more in terms of like the umbrella, right? Because it's really tempting and easy to say, well, I'm just going to do like the attorney podcast, right? I'm only going to do a podcast for divorce attorneys, but then you really limit your scope. And then you run into the problem of, well, say there's this podcast and you've had like 80 episodes and all these different divorce attorneys. Who's going to like binge listen to that? Yeah. And then a guest would be thinking like, so now I have to compete with all these other guests who are just like me. So if you think of more in terms of the umbrella and these like wide varied guests, like my podcast is called Marketer of the Day. So, I mean, that anyone who markets themselves can show up. And so it's always interesting for me as a host and interesting as a listener. And then you have doing business with a servant's heart. So that's like anyone who is in business and serving, which is like mostly, I mean, not everyone, there might be some scumbags, but mostly everyone is in business to do good in the world. So you can talk to all sorts of interesting people that you otherwise wouldn't have been speaking to, and you keep the niche very wide, so that way it just makes it quite a variety of different guests and topics.
That's a great tip, because I'm helping a couple people with their podcast, and they were niching down way too low. And they're like, oh, if I do salon owners that work with tattoo, I said, no, just think of a broader subject. And now she's come up with something that's really broad that can fit more people, but follows her passion. So audience, remember that tip. Don't niche down, niche. What'd you say? You said niche large. No, what you said, yeah. Some niche out, make it big, umbrella. It's a great analogy for that. That's awesome. Reach out to him and talk to him more about it. I'm sure he'll sit down and talk to you, see how he can help you. Another way you can help is, what's a book you've read or two that's really helped you get to where you are today?
So I would say that the two most valuable books I've ever read, number one is Think and Grow Rich. Yeah. And for some people, that's like their Bible, right? Some people like go through that again and again. And there's all sorts of little like rules. And basically the synopsis of Think and Grow Rich is they interviewed all these wealthy people and figured out, well, what are their success factors? And there's a few different things, but like what's big about Think and Grow Rich is using the power of your imagination. And it's so easy for your subconscious brain, which is running on old, outdated caveman software, to think about the negative, to think about don't leave the cave, play it safe. The tiger's out there. Don't take risks. And Think and Grow Rich is all about setting goals and being excited about the future and using the power of your imagination to like visualize what you want. And that's kind of been kind of like parodied or kind of turned into something weird with like this idea of like The Secret, but there's something interesting there of overcoming your past or your caveman negativity and using visualization for good. And then as far as applying that into practice, the E-Myth is like a huge, simple idea, but it's powerful. And this idea of the E-Myth of figure out your standard operating procedures and what you do, including with like podcasting or wherever it applies, figure out what your checklist is. And then a really powerful idea in that changed my life is the idea of there's like in your business, you have like the worker tier, the manager tier, and the boss tier. And so you might think that you're all the above. Well, then you're just the worker tier. And so what you really need to do is figure out what's the work that needs to be done in your business, like podcast production, or, get the step-by-step in managing that salon or whatever it is. There's like the work to be done. Then there's the manager to like assign the work and check the work. And then there's the boss that kind of tells the manager what to do and steers the ship. And just kind of thinking it in terms of your business in those three levels. It's so simple, but it helps so much. So Think and Grow Rich for the positivity, imagination, creativity, motivation, and then the E-Myth for that idea of boss, manager, worker.
I love the Think and Grow Rich because I've read that in the last 2 years. And that's where my book, my title of my podcast came from, The Law of Increase. Serving. So I appreciate you mentioning that, because it's why I'm here today talking to you with this podcast. And it's an incredible book and people should read it. I want to thank you. We're running out of time here. I want to thank you for being on the show. His information will be in the show notes, but what's the name of your company, and give them the way they can contact you?
Marketeroftheday.com. Name of my company is dfypodcast.com.
Reach out to him. If you're thinking about a podcast, I hear people say there's so many podcasts out there, but you know what? You don't need to connect with 300 million people in the United States. You connect with a few thousand and you help one person with your podcast, like my podcast has, it's well worth it. With that being said, because you're a smart guy, I can tell, and you got a great business going, what's one tip you can leave my audience that can help them in their business or personal life?
Be a speaker in whatever context that means for you. I was thinking just this morning how I joined a mastermind a few years ago, and we went to this mastermind, and each person sitting at the table had to stand up and talk about their business, talk about their problems. And I remember being so nervous because I thought, what am I going to say? I have to stand up and maybe tell a joke and keep people entertained. And now in my more older years, that idea seems very doable. And it's a thing where I'm not as nervous about it. You have your podcast here where we're meeting, I'm speaking, you're speaking, we can articulate points and answer questions. But I'm sure there was a point in your life, Steve, where you were afraid to talk to a girl, you were afraid to go to a job interview, and you need to develop that muscle. You need to be a speaker in whatever context that is. And that might mean making sales calls, but it especially means podcasting, so that way you can talk about your business and your passion and your message and have these conversations. Do podcasting and be a speaker in whatever context that means for you to increase your confidence and get your message figured out.